Alright, back with chapter 8 talks about this. It says, Gideon, let's see, it says Gideon defeats Zebah and Zalmunna. Then the men of Ephraim said to him, What is this that ye have done unto us, not to call us when you went to fight against Midian? And they accused him fiercely. And he said to them, What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the grapes harvest of Abiezer? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, or of Zebah. What have I been able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger against him subsided when he said this. These people are crazy. Here they are coming against Gideon when God used Gideon to defeat the Midianites, and some of these Jews here got mad about that. Well, man, this makes no sense because, you know, I just don't understand it pretty much, because when you think about it, God is on the side of the Jews, and He's helping the Jews to defeat these evil Canaanite people. And right here, you know, God used Gideon to defeat these Canaanites. And right here you got some Jews who are mad about that, and they're idiots, to be honest with you. I mean, God used Gideon to help defeat these Midianites. And of course, like always, you always want to have people who's always want to complain about every little thing. So anyway, and Gideon's like, why aren't you complaining? God just used me to help defeat these people, these evil people that are trying to overtake us. And here you are trying to complain about it. Stop it, stop complaining. Just stop, And that's when they pretty much shut up when Gideon said that. I can't stand people who complain over every little thing. It irritates me. And here irritated Gideon. And Gideon came to the Jordan and crossed over, and he and 300 men who were with him, exhausted yet pursuing. So he said to the men in Succoth, Please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. And the officials of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? So Gideon said, Well then, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I will flail your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. Wow. So here it is, these officials, whoever they are, Gideon saying, Please feed us. We've just defeated the Midianites. We're hungry. We're starving. We're thirsty. Will you please feed us? And these people, these idiots right here, they're saying, no, why should we do this? Why should we feed you? Why should we give you water? And Gideon's like, all right, if you're gonna be this way, then he pretty much says, may the wrath of God fall upon you. And I would do the same thing. Here God just used you to help defeat these evil people. Like I just said, you're always gonna have people who want to complain about every little thing, man. And they don't realize that when they complain about someone who is of God, they're actually complaining about God, because if that person's of God that they're complaining about, they're actually complaining about God, because God's going to use His child to do His will. And when you come against God's child, you're coming against God, and God's wrath will fall upon you. So stop bickering and stop complaining about stuff. And anyway, it's crazy. Let's see, it says, and from there he went up to Peniel and spoke to them in the same way, and the men of Peniel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. And he said to the men of Peniel, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Here the people in Peniel did the same thing. They're like, they're telling Gideon, why should we give you food and water? Because Gideon with God's help just destroys these Canaanites, and you're not going to give him bread and water to help him, move on, to help him replenish his health. How dare you? There's people out there, man, out in the world, especially who are watching this right now, man. Y'all will complain about every little thing, and man, and you call yourselves Christians, But when a true Christian stands up for God, you want to go behind their back and bicker about what they're doing? I say the same thing that Gideon says, may God's wrath fall upon you, buddy. Because I'm telling you right now, you come against God's child, and you bicker, and you complain about what they're doing, just like Gideon says right here, I will also say, may God's wrath come upon you. Because when you come against God's child, you come against God. Plain and simple. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkar with their army, about 15,000 men, all who were left of all the army of the people of the east, for there have fallen 120,000 men who drew the sword. And Gideon went up by the way of the tent dwellers east of Nabah and Jogbadiah, and tagged the army, for the army felt secure. And Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them and captured the two kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and he threw all the army into a panic. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from the battle by the ascent of Heres, and he captured a young man of Succoth and questioned him. And he wrote down for him the officials and elders of Succoth, 77 men. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are exalted? And he took the elders of the city, and he took thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them taught the men of Succoth a lesson. Amen. These people deserved it. I mean, here they come against Gideon about what he did. I mean, he pretty much just saved their tails from being killed. And their what do you call it? Their response to Gideon was hate. I mean, it was just hateful, totally against Gideon, totally against God. And Gideon promised them, okay, when I come back, Gideon said, if you will not feed us and give us drink for what we just did for us saving your tails, Gideon says, if you're not going to help us, then when I come back, I pray, and he's saying that, may God's wrath come upon you, and I will throw, bristles and thorns and all that, and briars. And he came back, and these people were still complaining, and Gideon taught them a lesson by, it says, because he took thorns of the wilderness and briars with them, and taught the men in Succoth a lesson, meaning he how do I say this? He taught them a lesson. All right. I mean, he prayed, or he said that when he came back, that he would teach them a lesson, because these men came against him and came against God for what Gideon did. And Gideon's a man of God, and when you come against God's child, you come against God, and God's wrath will fall upon you. And this is what's happening right here. And Gideon promised that, and here it is right here. So don't come against God's child. When you do that, you come against God, and God's wrath will come upon you. So stop bickering, stop complaining about what a person of God is doing, plain and simple. Because if you don't, God's wrath will fall upon you. Plain and simple, man. So just stop. And he broke down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the city, which they deserved. Like I said, the men of Peniel and the men of Succoth came against Gideon because Gideon did God's will. And since these men of Succoth and Peniel came against God's will, because they came against Gideon, wrath, as Gideon prayed for pretty much, wrath came upon these evildoers. And they deserved it. And people who come against me, man, you can do it. And when you do, I pray that God's wrath will fall upon you. How do I do? Because when you come against me, or when you come against a child of God, they have every right to pray that God's wrath will fall upon them. It is biblical, and it happens right here in the Bible. So yeah, you come against God's child, come against God, and God's child has the right, and he has the right to pray that God's wrath will fall upon that person. And it did right here, buddy. So there you go. Then he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, Where are the men whom you killed at Tabor? They answered, As you are, so were they. Every one of them resembled the son of the king. And he said, They were my brothers, the sons of my mother, as the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you. So he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise and kill them. But the young man did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a young man. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise yourself and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon rose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and he took the crescent ornaments that are on the necks of their camels, Gideon's Ephod. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Gideon, or the hand of Midian. Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. And Gideon said to them, Let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earrings from his spoil. They had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. Actually, when we think about it, okay, when you go all the way back to the early, or the first couple of books of the Old Testament, especially back to Abraham, of course you have Isaac and Ishmael. Okay, Abraham is basically Abraham's the father of the Jews and Muslims, and because not Ishmael. Well, you get Abraham, who's the father of the Jews and Muslims. Out of Isaac came the Jews. Out of Ishmael came the Muslims. And this right here is actually talking about the first time that the Muslims are mentioned here in the Bible, when you think about it. Because it's talking about, I'll read it again. It says this, it says, Let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earrings from his spoil. For they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites, or they were Muslims. And when you go back to, let's see here, to verse 21, it talks about the crescent ornaments, which when you know the Muslim flag, when you see the Muslim flags like Saudi Arabia, it has the crescent moon. This also resembles the crescent ornaments. That's the Muslim religion. And here the Ishmaelites are basically the first Muslims, and he says, and right here it says, Let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earrings from the spoil, for they had golden earrings because they're Ishmaelites or Muslims. Again, Abraham's the father of the Jews and Muslims, because out of Isaac came the Jews, out of Ishmael came the Muslims. There you go. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a cloak, and every man threw in it the earrings of the spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was about 2,000 shekels of gold, besides the crescent ornaments and the pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and besides the collars that were around the necks of their camels. And Gideon made an ephod of it and put it in his city in Ophrah, and all Israel whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. So when you think about this, so actually the first Muslims who were the Ishmaelites, because out of Ishmael came the Muslims, became the Muslims, and Gideon here takes their ornaments and burns them to make gold, and then the Jews ended up trying to follow. They ended up trying to follow the Muslim garments, pretty much, the Muslim ornaments. So it's kind of like, when you think about it, it's like the Jews are now trying to start to follow the Muslim movement in a way, because, like I say, Abraham's the father of the Jews and Muslims, because out of Isaac came the Jews, out of Ishmael came the Muslims, and here it is. Gideon ordered the first Muslims, here the Ishmaelites, he ordered them to give him their ornaments or gold and all of that so they could burn it. But when he did that, the Jews seen it, and they started wanting to follow pretty much the Muslim religion, when you think about it, and it became a snare to Gideon, like a thorn in the side. Alright. Let's see. It says it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. So Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they raised their heads no more, and the land had rest for 40 years in the days of Gideon. The death of Gideon. Jerubbaal the son of Joash went and lived in his own house. Now Gideon has 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives, and his concubine, which is his wife, or his wives, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and he called his name I'm trying to say this right. Abimelech. And Gideon the son of Joash died in good old age, and was buried in the tomb of Joash's father at Orpha of the Asbarites. As soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals, or the demons, pretty much, and made Baal-Perith their god. Wow, so Israel turns to Satan now, which, man, that's going to tick off God. We see that later on. And the people of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who is of course Christ, who had delivered them from the hand of all the enemies on every side. And they did not show a steadfast love to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. So here in chapter 8 there's a lot of cover here, because Gideon defeats Zebah and Zalmunna. And of course, like I said, you get people get mad about that. And whenever they got mad about Gideon defeating Zebah and Zalmunna, people that came against Gideon because of that, God's wrath fell upon them. Because Gideon was of God, he was doing God's will, and these people got mad at Gideon for doing God's will, and for that God sent his wrath upon these people, which they deserved. That's why stop your bickering and stop complaining about stuff. When someone of God's doing God's will, stop complaining and stop bickering and just stop it. Just stop it. You know, they're doing God's will, and just leave them alone. Stop your bickering. Gideon's Ephod, the Gideon's Ephod pretty much talks about Ishmaelites, which were the first Muslims, because like I said, Abraham's the father of the Jews and Muslims. Abraham's the father of Isaac and Ishmael. Out of Isaac came the Jews, out of Ishmael came the Muslims. Here it is, the first Muslims are mentioned here. And Gideon has their ornaments and all that stuff burned into gold. And when that happens, the Jews see it and they start following, you know, in a way, when you think about it, they start following the Muslims in a way. And then that becomes like a snare, like a thorn in Gideon's side. And let's see here. Yeah, it became a snare to us, like a thorn in his side, and then Gideon died. But anyway, that's chapter 8. I'll be right back with chapter 9 in a minute.